The NBA is back from All-Star Weekend, and I wanted to come in and just kind of talk about all 30 teams really quickly, not in depth, that's a main channel thing, but I have been locked in enough this year to be able to say at least one thing that if you haven't been paying full attention or you're just kind of joining us, I think I got something interesting for each team about where they are headed into this next part of the season, and then some of their futures as well. The Boston Celtics are indeed still at it, and this has a lot to do with Jaylen Brown, who has blipped in the MVP race, and while he won't win, he has absolutely done what he's exceeded expectations in helping the Celtics remain relevant in this conference. Now, coming into the season, I argued that perimeter talent was enough to get them to the play-in, but the budget bigs that they've had, mainly Neemias Queta, Luka Garza, they held up well enough. The defensive principles of the team stayed, and as of today, they are second in the Eastern Conference, currently awaiting the return of Jason Tatum. So whether he comes back or not, JB will probably remain the #1 this year, and there will be people who told you that they knew he was going to do this and this should be expected. No. We remember the left hand memes. We remember the disrespect. It was conceivable he could have been good. It was not a full expectation for him to come in, be on the MVP list, and still have the Celtics looking like contenders in the Eastern Conference. So yes, with the lineups they've been able to keep around him, especially now with the addition of Vucevic, despite the tragedy last May, this team is still very much in play, and it is not out of the realm of possibility for them to end up in the NBA Finals. If you've just returned, you've probably saw Charlotte under 500 around the play-in again, but this is not the Charlotte you're used to. These Hornets playing together are actually really good, and upon meeting the Detroit Pistons, you know, the game that resulted in that huge brawl a couple of weeks ago, the starting five for this team was 16-1. Unfortunately, they're dealing with a couple of suspensions right now, so it might break the momentum, but at long last, the structure for the team is there. They've got the young guys. Concanipa is an amazing rookie. I can't say who he plays exactly like, or else it's going to get me in trouble. It's going to get me yelled at, but they've got 5 solid pieces that fit. They traded for Kobe White. This is not a team I would want to deal with if they, and not even if, with the moves the Bulls made, with where the Bucks are. I can't say for sure they're going to stay in the play-in, but they should. And if that lineup comes back and they coalesce, I would just say for the rest of the teams back in the standings there with them, I would want to deal with any of them before I dealt with Charlotte in the first round of the playoffs. It's a little different this time than the previous years where they've been in the play-in and we know they're just there to be there. No, they have the pieces now. It's not just waiting on LaMelo to do something cool and make a highlight anymore. It may surprise you that the Philadelphia 76ers are 6 games above 500, and they have not just been surviving the whole Joel Embiid, Paul George contract plot, they've actually kind of thrived in it. All the talk was what they were going to do, being that the contracts are so large and have so much time left on them, and at least for Embiid, he is still a dominant piece when he plays. It's very confusing because he definitely has a few things he does that just don't really look good. Sometimes he doesn't jump as high, he doesn't really slide well on defense, but when he gets the ball, he still commands a double team, he's still got his skills, he can still give you 30 and 12. He's not washed like you would have thought with the amount of injuries and what the talk was over the summer. It started to feel like, damn, how much longer is he going to play? And when the whole team is playing, and obviously the whole situation with the back-to-backs and managing those two, there's different lineups all the time, but with Maxi's ascension, VJ Edgecombe being a really good rookie, and Embiid still being able to play at a star level, if you were sitting around hoping for the best for Philly over summer, well, I would say you've got the best of what this situation was. I still wouldn't go as far as to expect any kind of run. The health is shaky. It's never a wise bet, but it did not crater. The Milwaukee Bucks, however, did crater, and you hear something different every single week. First, Shams is a liar. Now another interview comes out where Giannis is like, well, but I still might not stay here forever, and I'm not even about to go through the whole thing. Long story short, this franchise has an aging star. They don't have a lot of assets on their roster, and they don't really control the fate of their picks for a while. Because of the stipulations on their pick right now, it could go one of many ways. As I speak currently, they are projected to get a top 10 pick still, but you're gonna have to keep an eye on it. They don't control it. And though Giannis currently sits with a calf strain, kind of like what I was talking about with the Hornets, they are only a game and a half outside of the play-in. With the injury history of some of these teams, there is a chance for them to still move up, still be there. But the hope right now would be for them to do as bad as possible if you're actually thinking about the future of the franchise. The story with them is a lot more about what happens in the summer and beyond. So the Orlando Magic did not break out this year. As a matter of fact, they are dealing with much of the same problems that they've been dealing with for the last couple of years. Injuries to multiple players, including their star core, not a lot of three-point shooting, and at the moment, the investment in Desmond Bane, it's not taking the team over the top. He himself is actually playing well. Paolo Banchero is relative to what you would have wanted, he's just not. As mentioned, he has dealt with injuries, but his game also has not expanded too much, and his extension has not even kicked in yet, so keep an eye on him for the rest of this decade. I would say the one positive they have going right now is, again, Desmond Bane did not turn out to be trash for them, and Anthony Black is progressing, so there's no chance of a run this year. They're one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the league. Not a very high chance for them to upset anybody. Franz Wagner is now also out again with that ankle. More or less, I would just say things are very stagnant for them. And yeah, some of us had high hopes coming into the season, especially in this East. Speaking of this East, what happened to Cleveland, who last year were actually playing at a historic pace for them? They were really posting franchise records. Well, they lost Ty Jerome, replaced him with Lonzo Ball. Ball was having a terrible season. The whole team was dealing with a lot of injuries, and for a large portion of this first half of the year, they looked extremely mid. That being said, the general manager locked the fuck in. They made their trades, they brought in some extra shooting, a Lonzo Ball replacement, but most importantly, James Harden. For the first time in his career, Donovan Mitchell has got a star guard running mate. No disrespect to Darius Garland, but he hasn't been healthy for a lot of their time together. He's not as good as James Harden. Yeah, this team so far through the year has been 500 when Mitch basically doesn't control the offense and score 30 plus. They did everything they could during this deadline, and they're currently only a game and a half out of second. So while both the Knicks and Cavaliers were probably pretty disappointing in the first half, given that the conference had essentially, or they were thought to have lost to contenders, they could still very much end up the 2 and 3 seed here. And the Cavs at their best, if this meshes, given that there is no juggernaut in this conference to beat, boy, I like their chances. This time, if Harden disappears for a game, there's another guard who probably won't disappear. So the different lineups they can run now, the rest that both Mitchell and Harden can get during games without the offense totally falling apart. I am excited for the finish to Cleveland season and for what they do in the postseason. The New York Knicks had a miserable January. No way around it. It was completely unserious. Then right before the All-Star break, they kind of whipped back into shape a bit. They've got some built-in disadvantages with how hard they have to fight and how hard Brunson, being the offensive guy on that team, has to fight to keep the defense steady. And between he and Cat, who fouls a lot and is just not a good defender whatsoever. For a contender, they've got some clear issues, but they did make the trade to get Jose Alvarado. I think that was extremely important, especially considering Deuce McBride is going to miss time. That was another creator for them. Alvarado just gives them another dimension and a definite plus on the defensive side. Specifically for the things they struggle with, I just think it was a really important pickup. The biggest thing from my first half of the season watch with them is simply, can they keep the defense at an intense enough level like you kind of saw in the weeks leading up to All-Star break? They don't have any leeway there, and so they've constantly got to be locked in, and the team they're gonna probably have to beat to get out of the East is extremely locked in on that side of the ball. The Detroit Pistons, yes. So if you are wondering about the Pistons 40-13 record at the time that I record this, no, that is not a fake team. This is not the 15 Hawks. What this is a young team that is a bit ahead of schedule. I've watched a ton of Detroit ball, and I've come away with the opinion relative to the rest of the conference, they've just got a leg up in, well, yeah, defense, their versatility. You saw in the Hornets game, they lost their front line. Duren and Stu got thrown out, and Paul Reed came in and basically snatched MVP of that game. And they've also been tested this year. They've played a stretch without Duren. They've had to shift things around because of some injuries. And as you see with the record, they have not fallen off. Their trade deadline was them acknowledging they probably did need some more shooting options. They brought in Kevin Huerter, who's not having a great shooting year right now, but still a shooter by reputation. And it was a quiet first couple of games for him. Even in that Charlotte game, I definitely feel like they just haven't really found out how to incorporate him yet. That's what the next part of this season is for. If they can get into these playoff series and not totally crater because Duncan Robinson and or Tobias Harris has an off night from, or an off series from the arc, they have a really, really good shot to get out of the Eastern Conference. Respect to Detroit. Even if they don't get out of the East this year, once again, they are young and ahead of schedule. They are not the 15 Hawks. The Toronto Raptors sitting at a comfortable 5th spot in the Eastern Conference, 32-23. When I watch this team, I think, wow, this would be the perfect 2000s team. I just knew. Their best defensive tandem with Scotty Barnes and Colin Murray-Boyles. That's a front line that can't shoot that well. It doesn't pack a mega offensive punch. Just about all the best players on this team do their best damage from inside the three-point line. They've got options to stretch the floor with, especially concerning that big man lineup. You can get Mamu Kelly in there. They can play both styles of ball, and even for what I expected, I would say the three-point percentage isn't terrible. It's just not quite good enough for me to really see them as contenders this year. I especially think in the playoffs, when this just turns into a lot of half-court sets, Their defense is probably going to keep them in some of these series. I don't think they would be good enough to match the best teams. Regardless, successful campaign for Toronto right now. I think the biggest concern joining RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, and Scotty Barnes was, okay, how many games are they going to play together? Guys have missed time, and they're still here with a chance to maybe get as high as 4th. Probably not going to be a play-in team. Definitely not a failed experiment. I like Toronto this year. Whew, the Miami Heat did pretty much nothing during the deadline, and they are 29-27. It feels like every time I turn a Heat game on, I see a new lineup. Tyler Hero has barely played this year. Regardless of the tough stretch Bam Adebayo just went through, not extrapolating that to his entire game, but he's just not the player I would want to be having to pay like $50 million to. Norman Powell did make the All-Star team, and coming into the year, I said, well, Tyler Hero says he wants to be like bigger than Dwayne Wade, and Norman Powell had the goal of an All-Star. As soon as Hero did return and play a little bit, they started talking about how they have to adjust to him and they have to learn and make it work, and that was kind of one of the problems that I foresaw. But also on that topic, they've just barely even gotten to do that whatsoever. So yeah, the Miami Heat are kind of where they always are, or in the 2020s, this is the typical story. They have a team where you could maybe convince yourself they could surprise somebody, and you know Pat Riley has banked on that before and they went to the finals. I don't think that's going to happen this year. They should probably right now be thinking about what is their future core. Is it smart for us to extend Norman Powell? Is Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo our future duo? They just have a lot of questions, and I would have actually just preferred the Heat years ago either made a big splash or, you know, come to the realization it might be time to start thinking about a different direction. Because more times than not, even if, when they do make a surprise run, it just looks like mediocrity. The Atlanta Hawks, they traded Trae Young. Yes, we did a couple of episodes of that GM here. I think we came out better in ATL than ATL came in real life. But again, like Milwaukee, they've got a pick situation. Only the Hawks have a better pick situation. And as of today, they are projected at number 2. And the mock draft has them with the Bonsta. So that's exactly who we got. And this is why the trade went down the way it did. Trae Young was obviously not a part of this future core. Jalen Johnson has begun to ascend. Trae did not have much market value, so he ended up in Washington. The Hawks got an expiring back, a guy who might help them make the play-in still, but is mostly valuable for the expiring. They got rid of Kristaps expiring, traded that back for Kuminga. Long story short, the moves they have all made this year have been geared towards, hey, if we make the playoffs this year, cool. What's really important is moving on from Trae and building a new team here. And with their situation, they are probably going to be able to do that. So yeah, like Milwaukee, it's more important about the summer and beyond for them. Chicago finally did the extreme blow up, covered the whole thing on my main channel. They have a ton of guards right now and a lot of expiring, so they're kind of just having tryouts, while at the same time they get to be worse, so hopefully their pick gets better. But yes, they finally did the thing and blew up the team the way they should have a very long time ago. The Indiana Pacers. So they've had Jay Huff at center for most of this year. We know this was just a total breakdown year after the finals and the injury. Then they went and got Ivica Zubac. That combined with the protections on this pick and the deal that involved with the Clippers, they could, emphasis on could, end up with Zubac next year and a high pick. Now, if the ping pongs don't go their way, I believe if it goes from 5 through 9, it will belong to the Clippers. Otherwise, it'll go to them. So yeah, India has set themselves up to come back next year and be a monster. Kind of the only thing that needs to be said about them right now. The Brooklyn Nets, I'm a little bit surprised with them. So yeah, they acquired Michael Porter Jr. He's played the best basketball of his career. So caveat there is, and one of the reasons I believe he probably wasn't moved, he's playing really well. The numbers are eye-popping. We have also kind of seen what it looks like to fit him into a winning team. I don't think it was really a situation of Denver could have done more with him as much as it was to be playing winning basketball. It's kind of what he needs to do. Playing how he does now with the extreme green light, and it's efficient, cool. Maybe that's the part we didn't know if he could handle the volume he does. It still is on the 15-win Brooklyn Nets. So if you were a contending team, say Detroit, and you were like, okay, cool, we're going to go get Mike, you just had to be really careful in disturbing the recipe of your team to add him based off of what he's doing in Brooklyn. That being said, given that Brooklyn is a tanking team and I don't think they are probably with MPJ long term, I'm kind of surprised him and Claxton survived the deadline. I thought there was teams that could have used them both or might have swung for them both. They did not, so at this moment it is just about MPJ continuing to maximize his production on this deal, so Brooklyn probably can move him at a certain point, and the Brooklyn Nets maximizing his draft pick. In the current mock draft, they sit number 4. And they've already got some talented pieces here as well, so they might find themselves on the rise in the next couple of years, depending on the decisions. The only team we have not talked about in the East is the Washington Wizards, and once again, just hang on, Wizards fans. Probably very much looking forward to the 2027 season because it'll be the first time they'll have been expected to really compete. They hit on the draft this year. Trey Johnson is very nice. With having him, Keyshawn George and Czar, and now these vets in Trae Young and AD, the rest of the season is also kind of just tryouts. Who's going to be able to come help and contribute to this next year while we're trying to make the playoffs, because right now it's about maximizing the pick. So there's a world out there where they come in with star vets, good young players, another new draft piece, and for the first time in a long time, really play for something in the East. They were the perfect franchise to land both Trae Young and Anthony Davis. People don't go to Washington. The Wizards are one of the only teams that would really need to think about giving Trae Young an extension. But even then, this works out better than I thought it did for Washington when that trade actually happened, because the way I see their roster now, I'm like, okay, if it works out next year with those two, cool. If not, we can kind of say goodbye to them in the relatively near future while having our young core of guys just kind of move on. So if you hadn't been paying attention, the Washington Wizards front office has been cooking ever since they gave Brad that BS extension. They've cleaned up a lot of the mess, and I'm kind of excited for the next 2 to 3 years. Oh, the Western Conference. Let's start off with the Los Angeles Lakers, who are currently 5th seed, 33-21. Could conceivably move as high as 3rd, and I don't think there would be anything that lies more than a 3rd-seeded Lakers team. Gosh, if you paid attention to them at all this year, look, it's not a horrific team. With them, it's simply the expectations that you have in Los Angeles with the names that you have on that team. But the bigger story with them is kind of just a stalling roster. A year after they got Luka, there's like a 95% chance LeBron and La La Land are done after this year, as they should be. They traded for his replacement last year, and they can win some regular season games, but the defense is not nowhere near a contending team. The versatility is not near a contending team. They got off of Gabe. They got a better guy for this roster in Luke Kennard. Really, the goal for them is just don't go outside in the postseason. That's kind of it right now. See what you have with some of the younger guys who are going to be here longer next to Luka, what their value might be next to him or in a deal for other pieces, and start thinking what you're going to do with the roster post LeBron immediately. I'm telling you, no matter how high they climb in this conference, they are not like the current top 3 teams. They just aren't. They are tied with the Minnesota Timberwolves, actually, and Minnesota did an important thing. That last minute deal they swung for Ayo Dosunmu. If you watch Minnesota basketball, you can know how crucial this can be, and is just having a god tier season, considering the space that he has to play with, the fact that I don't believe offensively Rudy Gobert or Julius Randle actually complement his game. No matter if they can post numbers together, they don't complement each other. The double teams he has to deal with, the blitzes, for him to basically still be putting up an efficient 30 and the best season of his career has me really excited for the day that he plays with another actual superstar and one that complements him. That being said, for right now, the bigger thing for them was finding out a better guard situation. They've kind of just been dealing. They gave Bones Highland a chance. Dante DiVincenzo handled some duties, but they were in desperate need of another guard who could create sometimes and who would also be a threat if left wide open. They needed that so bad, and that's what they swung for in Dosunmu. So that's what I'll be watching for with the second half for them, how that pans out. Still, I don't foresee the conference finals for them this time. They have played all the top teams well, so I will give them that. But I do believe this time in a series, there are teams that over the course of a 7-gamer match them well enough that I wouldn't expect that type of run this year. But boy, Ant would have a lot more press if he did not play in Minnesota. Not saying that I want him moved. I'm saying for what he's been able to do on a team that, since the conference finals in 2024, has verifiably gotten worse, I think he deserves more credit. The San Antonio Spurs are 3 games behind the Thunder, who kicked this season off looking like they could win well over 70 games. In hindsight, they'll look back and say, oh, we didn't pay attention to the strength of schedule, and that's a fair point, but they've also dealt with a ton of injuries. And I'll also say it wasn't fully apparent at the beginning of the season in the areas that they've regressed, i.e. Lou Dort kind of reverting back to his pre-shooting days. The team as a whole, very mid with 3-point shooting. I think Shea might really kind of, I don't want to say cruise, but he has a great chance to win another MVP with the way that he's playing on a team that has had this many injuries, and low key, when they play a good team, they have some limitations. Sorry, when they play a great team. One of the more important guys who's been in and out is J-Dub. He has not really been great this year, and OKC, they can't afford to be any worse than they were in last year's postseason, in my opinion. Because last year, the zone almost got them. There was just a lot of bets that, hey, if we can focus on Shea, we're just going to have to live with these other guys hitting or not hitting shots. And it almost worked a couple of times. Now, also a couple of times, more than a couple of times during that run, J-Dub came up huge, and I do wonder if he's capable of that this season with how in and out he's been. I think during the trade deadline, the hope was probably that they could upgrade the wing position a little bit. That didn't work out, but then they went and got Jared McCain kind of for free, and that's a big deal. That's another potential creator. That's another shooter. When they had essentially already added that with AJ Mitchell, who barely played last year. So don't be fooled. Just because they didn't win the 70 games doesn't mean this isn't still an incredible team. I would honestly still call them the favorite in the conference right now, but I wouldn't call them the overwhelming favorite, especially considering we know how coaches are going to approach a playoff series with them. For instance, the San Antonio Spurs. If you're watching this video for information you just may not have seen yet, I'll tell you what Wembanyama is and what he is not. What he is an incredible player who on any given night can do something you've never seen. What he is not at this moment is a complete player. He's still got weaknesses to his game on both ends of the ball. The man is not Thanos. His team can be beaten. That being said, his team is really damn good. And pending what happens with the health of mainly the top 3 teams here with Denver and OKC, they may be in the conference finals. People started trying to throw De'Aaron Fox under the bus this year when it looked like they didn't need him. Oh boy, they need him. They need his creation. They need him to be able to shoot. They need him to be that secondary guy when teams decide they are just going to completely swarm Wemby and not care about anything else. But yeah, this team, funny enough, it pops more because they have Wembanyama, but I almost kind of think of them like the Pistons, where they are slightly ahead of schedule. Like, the expectations of this team this year was not to come in and be second seed and have Shea call them the better team early in the season. That wasn't the expectations. They've got guys here who are still going to get better, i.e. the rookie Dylan Harper, i.e. Stephon Castle. They're not done yet, and that's scary because there is a world where they could still end up in the NBA Finals, but it also feels like a year of maturation on this team is going to have them looking way different. To round out what I believe are the true contenders in this conference, yeah, the Denver Nuggets. Look, 35-20 right now. I had them as the first seed this year. Both completely obliterated that. Even before then, OKC just playing the way they did to start the year kind of gave them that cushion, but also health, yeah. Jamal Murray and Jokic are both having dominant seasons, but Murray specifically is having the best season of his career, and it's unfortunate it's coming at a time where one of his role players will go out every other game. So for that reason, I do have to be worried, especially with this Aaron Gordon thing. The injuries were a big reason they didn't beat OKC last year. And if they continue, there's just certain things they won't win without. They won't win without a Peyton Watson this year. They will not win without an Aaron Gordon this year. That being said, you have to be looking at them like, hey, they almost got the Thunder and they were a worse team last year and they were injured. It went 7. They are a lot better this year, and they have the playbook to play with OKC. So for them, it'll totally be health in the second half of the year if they can turn that around. I'm not going to lie to you, especially based off of what happened last year. I have them neck and neck with OKC as favorites to get out of the conference. The silver lining of all the injuries is, again, Peyton Watson was able to emerge. His shooting, his offensive contributions held up over volume and just a different role. He started putting the ball on the floor. It's a two-way guy. The Denver Nuggets are in a perfect position to slingshot to a second championship. Guys just have to be there. Oh man, the Golden State Warriors. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Yeah, made a video about them recently. They're at the end of the Golden Dynasty. Jimmy Butler tore his ACL, so there will be no surprise run this year. Got off of the Kuminga situation late. I would not bank on Porzingis playing super consistently, and even if he does, this is just no longer a good team. Definitely a unit it's way more important what happens with them going forward. They do have their picks to end the decade. They made an offer for Giannis. It did not work out. Steph will have 1 year left on his deal after this. I don't really know where things are headed there. I just don't. But they aren't like a lot of other franchises where they have zero options, because again, all else fails, they just kind of hit their rebuilding era. But right now, if oh man, it must hurt to be a Golden State fan. It just has to. If you're thinking about how Steph is still Steph-tacular, and they had a chance in the 2020 draft to position themselves right now to still be a lot more optimistic about the future than they are. Oh, very, very unfortunate. But what can you do? You own the 2010s, man. Does it really hurt that bad? The Dallas Mavericks. Oh man, I cannot. Okay, let's start here. They cleaned house. We know they traded AD. All their moves at the deadline were geared towards the Cooper Flag era, and yeah, he's just steadily improved here leading up to All-Star break. Did sustain an injury, however, they've got a very clear future superstar on their hands as long as he stays locked in. You can say that because you can look at the skills that he has now, and you're like, oh, cool, now the outside shot just needs to get a little bit better. He just needs to mature. The things that he does today on the court are the seedlings of a superstar. That's what's different than just looking at a good player who posts numbers and trying to project that. You can see it on the court right now. He just has to completely eventually get there. Which is funny because if you look at the trajectory of Dallas and LA, and knowing a year ago we were talking about the Mavericks being the craziest organization of all time, if LA does fail to build the future for Luka and the Mavs don't fail to build the future for Flag, who is younger, more athletic, probably not going to be a cone on defense, conversation is going to be one for the ages in a couple of years. Still, I just have a hard time squaring this one because if Kyrie and AD had have played, the Mavs would have still been good. They would have never got Cooper Flag. I don't know in my brain how to handle the fact that it worked out this perfectly for them. And even if you want to argue there was foul play, to get to the foul play was still a leap of faith. Both Kyrie and AD had to... Things happened to AD the way we thought they were going to, but you could not have predicted the Kyrie part. Dallas is currently slated 7th in the mock draft. Especially depending what happens with Coop, there is very much a world where they drop a spot or two, but then again, the Jazz are also really doing their... They're doing their damn best. Let's talk about Utah. So Utah made a buyer's move at the deadline, but then they still started blatantly tanking. So here's the problem. It was too on the nose, man. I saw the Jazz. This is the first time I've actually seen Jazz fans in full force on Twitter, but the issue with it was too on the nose to have the guys play 3 quarters and then try to sit them in games you were winning. And they low-key blew up the spot because now tanking is at the forefront of the conversations. The NBA went and fined them and Indiana. Whereas the Wizards absorbed Trae Young and AD, and nobody asked any questions with them sitting out the rest of the year. They immediately just didn't even pretend. They were like, look, Trae had a couple of injuries in ATL. We're going to make sure he's good for next year. He's out. AD, out. And these are 2 guys, I think, if they were on teams that were actually trying to do something, they could probably play. So when I saw that, I texted my friend. We're on NBA Talk all the time. And I just said, I promise if you are Utah and you see what has happened with Washington, nobody is going to be asking where Jaren Jackson is in Utah. Just use an alternative method and don't be so on the nose with it where he's had a good game and your team is winning and he mysteriously doesn't play. That draws too much attention. But yeah, the spot is blown up and now they're talking about not even having a draft one day. Utah made that move with this Lauri Markkanen timeline and feeling like they already have a lot of core pieces. Didn't want to continue to try to bank on the draft, although right now they would keep their pick and that's what they are fighting to do. And that's where the allegations came out that OKC went to the league and was like, hey, there's some funny business going on here. OKC is a small market who suffered a lot in their past. They are in their greedy era and I get it. Either way, Jaren Jackson is now out. I don't know if they're going to be able to outslide the Pelicans. It just kind of feels like the real tanking teams here with Mavs, Jazz, Pels, the Kings as well. Yeah, I don't really know. They're all trying so hard to lose. With 3 games separating each of them, I don't really know if that's going to change too much. So then let's finish the tanking conversation. The Sacramento Kings, Domantas Sabonis out, Zach LaVine out. Same thing, right? Not here to talk about the validity of it. I just consider this player's being taken out back. You aren't going to out-tank us. I think this has been the plan from the start with Sacramento. You get a bunch of vets to come play here. You don't trade them. They don't fit. They aren't bad players. They just do not fit. They made a trade for DeAndre Hunter, who's having a bad season. That's another reason the Cleveland Cavaliers didn't excel this year, is he couldn't even replace the Max Strus shooting, as he was last year when he was actually there. He was shooting it very well. All the things they traded for him for kind of went down the drain. Probably not going to win Sacramento any extra games. They're currently slated to get the first pick. And then there's the Pelicans. Very, very weird thing going on here. Zion is like Kawhi, and the guy who he can be out at any moment, but he is also still really good when he plays. For him specifically, I don't think it really changes his trade value because if you just look at his career, he has these on-off years. So any team out there is probably past the point where they're going to gamble crazy on Zion Williamson. So that's probably one reason the Pelicans aren't really doing a ton at the deadline. They're like, hey, we're stuck with him and hopefully he stays healthy and finally pans out. But their draft thing kind of went 50-50. They fumbled and gave Indiana back their pick, but at least they did get their guy they were banking on. And he turned out good. Derek Queen is good. And they have good players. Again, a lot of these guys just aren't ever healthy. So that's how, if you're wondering why the Pelicans would think they're in a good position or that they have a quote-unquote playoff roster, that's why they think that. Jeremiah Fears is going to get better, allegedly. You've got good wings. You're a small market. No one's going to. You don't want to continue to have to blow things up. But yeah, I'm 50-50 on the whole thing because they would absolutely be in the making to get a great pick this year, and instead right now the Hawks would receive it. Houston, we have multiple problems. Okay, so unconfirmed burners aside, oof. I mean, this just kind of fell apart for them, and I don't know if I say fell apart, but this started to fall apart for them with the Fred VanVleet injury at the very beginning of the year. That, in my opinion, had pretty much taken realistic championship contention off the table, given their guard play and how many wings they have and what role he would have filled. So I don't think they have filled that role. As a matter of fact, I know that they haven't. And then they lost Steven Adams as well. It looks like it's for the season. Offensive rebounding was a big way that they survived last year and was as good as they were. And this year, with how good they were still, even without Fred, yeah, losing both of them, championship's not going to happen this year. Amen Thompson is a horrific three-point shooter. And being that he has to play guard sometimes, and that team's issues and knowing how playoff basketball is played, I'm not optimistic. They still managed 4th seed here, could finish 3rd. And yeah, they would be a tough playoff team. That's still a tough matchup. They got a lot of big bodies. You have KD. It's not a bad team. It's not a championship team. And then they have Amen, who's going to become eligible for a massive extension. Oh, buddy. Man, the way basketball is played today, it's crazy. It's crazy, players and having to pay them on potential. And if they're young and they're even a little bit a part of what you do and how you succeed, a lot of these teams end up having to pay these guys. Interested to see what ends up happening there. But for Houston, yeah, come back healthy next year and possibly make some moves and figure out what happens with Mr. Get Off My Dickerson on the team here. Now, the team they acquired him from, Phoenix, just blew expectations out of the water, almost 10 games above 500 at the time of this recording. And they put on a masterclass in how to have a star player who looks like his time is running out on your team and then just be able to revamp and still compete with him and never have to hear a single trade rumor. Devin Booker seemed primed for that position. Dillon Brooks was doing a lot for Houston, but he has definitely expanded his offensive game here. They even had to survive a stretch without Book. They've become one of the better defensive teams in the league. Colin Gillespie, who I always remember from the G League a few years ago when I was covering them, has come in as an ultra important guard for this team. Look, for the Phoenix Suns to not have a pick that they outright control until, oh my goodness, like 2032. This season doesn't necessarily fix things, but also having to belly out of a trash big three with very little flexibility and still end up here with a chance to make it to the playoffs. I'm happy if I'm a Phoenix fan right now. If things went well enough, they could get as high as realistically probably 4. But the important thing is, even without having really been able to use Jalen Green at all this season, they have remained competitive. They're better than they were last year. Overall, they are not in as bad a position as they could have been. The Portland Trail Blazers, check it out, right? The last time I checked, this team is like top 4 in 3-point attempts, and they are flirting with the Orlando Magic for worst team in the league in terms of 3-point shooting. This is why some games they just win. The threes fall, all of a sudden they look great. The threes don't. It's a different story, and they've dealt with a ton of injuries. Of course, the big news here, especially according to All-Star Weekend and the questions reporters chose to ask, Deni Avdija, All-Star, gets a ton of free throws and very hard guy to defend. I mean that on the court and like in my position. He has made improvements in his game, and they've got pieces to work with here, but this year is a little no man landish for them. The Bulls have their pick this year, but it is top 14 protected. Right now, it is projected 11. So like many other teams, it's more about the offseason right now. And then the Trailblazers will have their pick next year. They'll have Orlando's in 2028. Swap rights with Milwaukee as well that year. Yeah, look, it's a building team, right? They don't fully control everything, and because of the play-in, they also still might make the playoffs. As a matter of fact, considering the teams behind them, they are probably just going to make the postseason now, 9th seed. A whole 5.5 games out of the play-in. Every team below the play-in line in the West is trying to die right now, including Memphis, who just blew it up at the right time. Again, had already gotten rid of Desmond Bane, sent off Jaren Jackson, building up Ty Jerome stock because I don't believe he's a part of the future timeline, and in this small sample size since he's returned, he's doing what Ty Jerome does. Next order of business for them, again, summer team, probably get rid of Ja Morant. I have to think that's what's next. Right now, projected 9 in the draft. They have a ton of picks to come. It's just totally what happens with these picks and space that they've created over the next couple of years. They have forfeited this year and can maybe drop a spot here in the standings. Last but not least, the Los Angeles Clippers, who shook the world when they went ahead and traded James Harden. And I do have to say I'm a little bit confused on how this caught them off guard. Again, we know their horrid pick situation. You knew the age of your stars. I'm gonna assume for a while you've known you probably weren't gonna extend Harden. Or I don't know, maybe they thought they were going to and just try to stay competitive for a while. But when Harden realized the door was closed on him getting his extension, they went ahead and worked out a deal. The Clippers have given themselves a chance to get a top 10 pick. Well, really 5 through 10. Only thing is that robot there in Los Angeles ain't giving up. And in theory, losing Harden and Zoo should pretty much can this. But you've added Mathurin. Some of the young guys who are already getting a chance as a result of all the other injuries on this roster are going to get even more of a chance now. And as long as Kawhi is killing shit the way he is, they can probably win some games. So they are also 5.5 games above the line. It's going to be a little bit difficult for them to slide any further than that. Will likely be fighting for a play-in spot, and given the back of the West, right now, if they were to make it, they probably still have an argument to be the second best play-in team here, the way it is at the moment. So yeah, they're totally at the mercy of what happens with this Pacers pick, and they're just gonna kind of figure it out from there. They did not trade Kawhi Leonard because he has a massive contract. He's also gonna be an expiring next year. So that was a hard deal to just figure out when they had to yeet Harden immediately. And on a 1 year, 50 mil, you do have to wonder if he's gonna get moved at all. A team would have to try to fit that. I see Kawhi a little like Zion, and no matter how good he plays, you do know you're still taking a risk by acquiring him. So it would have to be a team that needs to take that risk and would also benefit from him just expiring if it didn't work out. Very confusing situation, because when he plays like he's playing right now, he's still one of the best players in the league. But if I was controlling a franchise, I also still would not bank anything on him being healthy long term. But then if he is healthy long term, he's a situation changer. Most confusing player ever, most confusing career ever. But regardless, yes, the Clippers are pretty much headed into that rebuild mode, and we'll just have to wait until the offseason to see what happens, which is unfortunate because they were one of the more compelling stories. They had turned this completely around. Right before they traded Harden, they were due to be probably, I think, the first team ever to start as far below 500 as they did and then finish above 500. Harden said that's cool, but I need my checks. So, and I don't even blame him. Cliches are cliches for a reason, and that old saying that the NBA is a business is one of the truer cliches. Well, that's it. That's something about all 30 teams here. Just wanted to kind of spitball for them, and if you hadn't been paying attention, let you know what I've seen as they head into this last bit of the season. Let me know what you think about these squads and your squad specifically, and also hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications every time a new video drops. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.